After studying this module, you shall be able to know about vertical integration, incomplete contracts, and asset specificity. Learn about the traditional and alternative explanation for the factors that motivates vertical integration. Identify the difficulties arising due to the incomplete contracts and asset specificity. Evaluate the role of vertical integration in solving the difficulties due to incomplete contracts and asset specificity.
Production of goods involves series of linked activities from raw material to the finished product. Joining together of these series under common ownership is referred as vertical integration. This is often used by the firm as a mean of altering both the boundary as well as size. The firm's decision to vertically integrate is guided by number of factors which has been explained using a traditional and an alternative approach. Traditional approach finds technical efficiency and production cost saving, uncertainty and security of supply, and market power as the major motivating factor behind integration, while alternative approach finds transaction cost economies as the major factor. Vertical integration has been used as the solution for the problem of opportunistic behavior arising from the incomplete contracts and asset specificity. The sections of this module deals with understanding the concept of vertical integration, factors that motivate firms for integration, and how it can be used as an effective tool in solving problem arising from incomplete contracts and asset specificity.
Let us start with the concept of vertical integration. Vertical integration refers to joining together of a series of separate but linked production processes under common ownership. This strategy is used by the firms to alter both boundary as well as size of the firm. Production of goods involves series of linked activities from raw materials to the finished product. End product of each step serves as the input for the next step. Finally, all these inputs are combined to meet the demand of the consumers. In other words, if the firm decides to make all the inputs required on its own, it becomes vertically integrated. Firms may go for partial integration if not all the inputs are used by the firm itself and it either sells some of its output of the intermediate stages or by inputs at other stages. Vertical integration involves ownership by one firm of two or more stages of vertically linked process. More the number of stages owned by the firm, greater is the degree of integration. Some of the firms establish vertical relationship even without owning the linked process. They do so by having effective control over the suppliers or buyers through long-term contracts. This has been termed as quasi-vertical integration by Blois in 1972. Firm may also rely on its own supplies along with market supplies to meet its requirements or may sell through a mixture of owned and non-owned outlets. This is termed as tapered vertical integration. The stages of production process which are to be integrated depends on the technological and production function of the concerned industry. Vertical chain for the oil industry is shown through this example. The vertical chain starts from oil production or extraction and is integrated to the point where the product is sold to another user. Firms in the oil industry have 8 vertically integrated stages, starting from oil exploration, moving down through the stages of production, refining, transportation, and selling to the end users, which comprises of petrol retailing, supply of heavy fuel oil for electricity generation, and oil feedstock for chemical industries. The major oil companies like Shell, Esso, and BP have fully integrated processes, producing and processing all the oil required to meet their own as well as other end users' demand. While some of the oil companies may not be fully integrated, as they may not use all the crude oil they produce and sell to the refineries, or they may not produce enough crude oil to meet their own requirement. Many companies do not produce sufficient crude oil to keep their refineries going and have to purchase crude oil from other suppliers. Different degree of integration is prevalent in the industry, as some of the oil firms may only own crude oil and refineries and buy facilities for transport such as pipelines or tankers to move its crude oil. Others may only own a refinery and a petrochemical plant, therefore making lateral move into another vertical chain. The decision of the firms to go for vertical integration is motivated by a number of factors. These factors have been categorized into 4 main headings by Pickering in 1974: efficiency gains in terms of technological joint economies, ability to avoid imperfect markets, distribution cost savings and planning, and lastly, avoidance of volatile markets. While Porter in 1980 suggested that the motivation for the firms to integrate comes from the factors like cost savings, increased control, improved communications, changed organizational climate, operations management, and competitive differentiation. Jones, in 2004, examined the reasons for vertical integration of the firms under 2 categories referred as traditional explanation and modern explanation. Both set of explanations look for the factor that increases the profit and reduces the cost, risk, uncertainty, and volatility. These 2 sets of explanations have been dealt in detail in the following sections. The second factor is uncertainty and security of supply. Vertical integration may reduce the uncertainties which are usually faced by non-integrated firms. The non-integrated firms make decisions with imperfect information in an uncertain environment while reacting to unexpected or unforeseen events. Vertical integration solves this problem by reducing the information deficiencies. The sources of uncertainty in relation to supply include unreliable suppliers who fail to deliver on time, resulting in shifting of the production schedules and subsequent losses related to it. Suppliers may sometimes use their monopoly power, and the quality of input may vary, which affects the quality of output. The sources of uncertainty in relation to selling the product include fluctuating price movements and consequent changes in the output, leading to either the reduction in output or increased storage of unsold output. Unexpected changes in demand with similar consequences. and greater certainty of access to sales outlets, particularly if the sector is dominated by powerful monopolistic groups. Vertical integration enables the management to overcome uncertainties relating to the quality of products, uncertainty of supply, and unexpected changes in the prices for inputs. However, it does not remove uncertainty related to the market of end users in the production chain. The two major advantages of vertical integration in relation to information are: first, as compared to the non-integrated firms, vertically integrated firms learn about the production issues related to all the aspects of linked activities. And secondly, vertically integrated firms are better positioned to hide information from the competitors as all the processing takes place in-house.
Market power. Market power enables the firm to raise prices above competitive levels in product markets. Vertical integration increases the monopoly power. Vertical integration has very little direct impact on the degree of monopoly at each stage. It works by changing the relationship between firms, as the previously independent supplier may now be owned by the competitors. This enables the integrated firm to increase its market share, as it prevents the supplier, which is no longer independent now, from providing the input and consequently disrupting the production to the rivals. The competitors would be forced to seek supplies from other sources. Thus, it becomes necessary to analyze the market structure at each stage to see the potential for increasing the dominance of the integrated firm. In case of vertical integration, dominance at more than one stage of the chain is required for the market power. This enables the dominant firm to inflict maximum damage to the non-integrated rivals by denying them the access to market or raw materials, as they can now manipulate the prices. The integrated firms may now supply the raw materials to the independent competitors and compete with them in the subsequent stages. Further, the integrated firms may cut down the profits of the independent competitors by narrowing the margin between the prices of the input that it sells to these independent firms and the price of the output that it sells. Market power of the integrated firms can be analyzed by examining two stages of the production chain: stage 1, seller, and stage 2, buyer. In a vertical production chain, there can be following four possibilities of relationship between these two stages.
With competitive seller and competitive buyers. In a competitive sector, the price is set equal to the marginal cost, and in case of monopoly, the price will be greater than the marginal cost. Thus, in case both the stages are competitive, integration of the two stages is not preferred, as the buyer will not be able to avail the benefits of lower price of the input with its own production facilities, and seller will not be able to receive the higher price for the final product. Therefore, under such situation, firms will not have any incentive to alter the structure and to integrate the stages. The second is the market structure 2, monopoly seller and the competitive buyers. In case one of the firms dominates the seller stage and the buyer stage is competitive, then the buyers have to pay the monopoly price charged by the seller. If the buyer has to procure a particular product in fixed proportion with other inputs, then the buyer has no other option than to pay the monopolistic price charged by the dominant seller. One clear option with some incentive available to the buyers in this case is backward integration with the monopolistic seller, provided the cost levels close to the incumbent are achieved. The other option available to the buyer to evade the monopolistic price of the input is to substitute the higher price inputs with lower priced inputs, if only the buyer can vary the combination of inputs. This would limit the market power of the dominant seller. In turn, the seller may have an incentive to acquire the buyer and ensure that the input is purchased. We can graphically show the input options available to the stage 2, that is buyers, to produce the output. The vertical axis represents the quantity of input B produced by a competitive enterprise, and the horizontal axis represents the quantity of input A produced by a monopolistic firm. The possible input combinations is shown by the isoquant for a given output Q star. The shape of the isoquant shows that the inputs can be substituted in response to the changes in relative prices of the inputs. If both sectors are competitive, then C1, C2 is the budget line that faces the buyer, and ML if sector A is monopoly. Thus, if the buyer faces price line ML, then the monopoly price restricts the use of input A, and the cost minimizing equilibrium position is at point E, compared with the point F if the competition prevailed in both sectors. As E is on the higher isocost curve C3, C4 compared to F, which is on the isocost curve C1, C2, E is a more expensive position. Thus it becomes clear that there is very little incentive for the dominant firm to go for forward integration and acquire significant market share in stage 2 to prevent it from influencing the market price. Third is the market structure 3 with competitive seller and monopolistic buyers. In case the seller stage is competitive and the buyer stage is monopoly, the buyers have little incentive to integrate backward, as there is no chance for the buyers to get the input at any lower cost. However, there is an incentive for the sellers to go for forward integration to control the monopoly buyer and receive greater share of monopoly profit, or to establish as a stage 2 producer if entry conditions permit. And lastly, the market structure 4 with monopolistic seller and monopoly buyers. Both stages will be earning monopoly profits if both are monopolies. Both will have similar incentive to acquire the other to attain total monopoly profits and get rid of any threats to entering its stage of production. The possibility of entry depends on the level of difficulties faced by the firms overcoming the barriers. The monopolist will be in a strong position when protected by the highest entry barriers. The role of vertical integration in the market structure can be explained by a numerical example. Let us assume that in stage 1 the marginal cost is 20, the competitive price is 20, and the monopoly price is 30. That is a profit margin of 10. In stage 2, the marginal cost is 40, the competitive price is 40 and the monopoly price is 60. The final price is the sum of the two individual marginal costs plus any profit margin that the market conditions allow. The final prices for the stage 2 output are as follows. For market structure 1, where both stages are competitive, the final price is 60, the sum of marginal costs in both the stages. For market structure 2, where the seller is monopolist and the buyers are competitive, the final price will be 70, which is the price of input plus the marginal cost of stage 2 production. This gives the monopoly profit in stage 1 and normal profit in stage 2. For market structure 3, where the seller is competitive and the buyer is a monopolist, the final price will be 80, which is the sum of the marginal cost in stage 1 plus the monopoly price in stage 2. A normal profit earned in stage 1 and a monopoly profit in stage 2. Fourth, with market structure 4, where both stages are monopolies, the final price is now 90, which is the sum of the monopoly prices in both the stages, with both firms earning monopoly profits. With market structure 5, where two monopolists integrate, the final price will be 100. Such a condition allows for the maximum profit. Here it is assumed that the additional market power, as both monopolies allow a price of 100 to be charged, allowing a profit margin of 60 in stage 2. This arrangement allows for the maximum profit.
Alternative explanation, vertical integration. Explanations based on the transaction cost economics is used as an alternative explanation for the motivation for vertical integration. These theories argues that the vertical integration will result in first, savings in transaction costs by avoiding the market, whereas using the market involves incurring costs in searching for suppliers, discovering prices, writing agreements and monitoring contracts. This also avoids the contracting costs. Increasing management costs due to the constant supervision and coordination required for the internalized activities resulting from integration. Thus, vertical integration will be justified only if the increase in management cost is less than the transaction cost. Williamson's model. One of the most important theories explaining the importance of vertical integration was given by Williamson in 1985. His model determined the optimal level of vertical integration and the size of the firm. Williamson in 1985 distinguishes between technical efficiency, which indicates whether the firm is using least cost production techniques, and agency efficiency, which indicates the extent to which the firm minimizes coordination, agency and transaction costs. Williamson argued that in comparison to the market alternative, the optimally vertically integrated firms minimize the sum of the production and transaction costs. Williamson argued that in comparison to the market alternative, the optimal vertically integrated firms minimize the sum of the production and transaction costs. Figure 3 depicts the Williamson's model. The vertical axis represents the difference between the costs arising from internal organization and transaction costs. The positive values indicate that the earlier is greater than the later. The horizontal axis has the asset specificity. This measures the extent to which the assets can be used to meet the requirement of the only one customer.
Graphically, the vertical axis represents the difference between the costs arising from internal organization and transaction cost. The positive values indicate that the earlier is greater than the later. The horizontal axis has the asset specificity. This measures the extent to which the assets can be used to meet the requirement of the only one customer. The curve C measures the difference in technical efficiency, which is the minimum cost of production under vertical integration, CI, minus the minimum cost of the production under market exchanged, CM. Delta C is always positive for any level of asset specificity, as the external suppliers are free to aggregate the demands from other buyers as well and take full advantage of the economies of scale and scope to lower the production cost as compared to the firms that produce the input themselves. However, the scope for external suppliers declines with the increasing asset specificity, as this implies more specific and specialized use of inputs, leaving fewer outlets for the outside suppliers. Delta G reflects the difference in agency efficiency. It measures the difference in transaction cost when the item is produced internally, GI, and when it is produced by outside supplier, GM, in an arm's length transaction. The curve is positive for low level of asset specificity and becomes negative as the asset specificity increases. This is because when the asset specificity is low, holdups is not a significant issue. In the absence of asset specificity, market exchange is more likely to be agency efficient than vertical integration. The curve delta C plus delta G is the vertical summation of the delta G and delta C. It represents the production and exchange costs under vertical integration minus the production and exchange costs under market exchange. Thus, when the curve is positive, market exchange is preferred to vertical integration. The firm will lie between O and K star. When it is negative, vertical integration is preferred as the production cost saving fail to offset the exchange cost of using the market. The firm will be located to the right of K star. Thus, the market exchange preferred when asset specificity is low and vertical integration is preferred when asset specificity is high. The following conclusions can be drawn about the factors motivating vertical integration. First, the gains from the vertical integration is less for a firm if the scale and scope of economies are significant. Second, the larger the product market, the more a firm will gain from vertical integration. Third, the firms capable of increasing the production will grow faster and are more likely to go for vertically integration. Next, the firm with multiple product lines and few inputs may benefit from vertical integration. The firms gain from vertical integration in case where the asset specificity is important. And lastly, the vertical integration will be more profitable than the market transactions if the asset specificity is significant enough, even when the production of the input is characterized by strong scale of economies.
Incomplete contracts. The contract is termed as incomplete if the comprehensive contracts cannot be written due to imperfect information. It does not cover all the eventualities in future, as imperfect information makes it very difficult to foresee the future at the time of agreement itself. In the case where two firms enter into a contract that does not cover all potential states of the world, there may be an incentive for one of the partners to control the other enterprise. This would enable them to have a control over the opportunistic behavior of one partner to hold up production of the other partner by withholding supplies. The partner that owns the asset holds all right of control not specified in the contracts. Thus, if an enterprise acquires the assets of the supplier firm, the enterprise will have a stronger bargaining position and have all the rights to the residual income. This further exhibits the relevance of incomplete contracts favoring the vertical integration. To understand incomplete contract, asset specificity and vertical integration, a case study of the relationship between Fisher Body and General Motors GM in 1920s, Klein 1991, is provided in the No More section of this module.
In case where two firms enter into a contract that does not cover all potential states of the world, there may be an incentive for one of the partners to control the other enterprise. This would enable them to have a control over the opportunistic behavior of one partner to hold up production of the other partner by withholding the supplies. The partner that owns the assets holds all the rights of control not specified in the contracts.
Asset specificity. Asset specificity refers to the extent to which the assets can be used to meet the requirements of the only one customer and cannot be put to any alternative uses without compromising with its productive value. There are four common forms of asset specificity as suggested by Williamson 1983 and 1985. These are as follows. First, physical asset specificity. Physical asset specificity refers to equipment and machinery designed to produce inputs specific to a particular customer or are specialized to use an input of a particular supplier. For example, the giant process for stamping out automobile body parts known as automobile dies are specific to the automobile manufacturer. Similarly, in coal-based thermal power station, efficiency of the boiler can be increased if they are designed for a specific type of coal based on specific properties of the coal like the heat, sulfur, moisture and carbon content. Second, site specificity. Site specificity refers to the conditions when investments in productive assets are made in close physical proximity to each other. Proximity of the assets for different stages of production reduces inventory, transportation, and sometimes processing costs. For example, in steel production, locating the blast furnace, steel making furnace, and casting units next to each other eliminates the need to reheat the intermediate products after each stage. This reduces the fuel cost considerably, realizing the thermal economies. Sometimes specificity may arise in case assets are immobile or can be relocated only after incurring substantial cost. 3. Human asset specificity. Knowledge accumulation and developing expertise that are specific to one trading partner is referred to as human asset specificity. For example, design and development of new automobile model requires a collaborative effort by the car company along with its part suppliers. The suppliers that becomes the part of the design process acquire knowledge specific to the production of those components. Fourth, dedicated assets. When an input supplier makes investments in general capital to meet the demands of a specific buyer, it is referred as dedicated assets. For example, NutraSweet was the largest producer of artificial sweetener as per time with global market share of 95%. Diet soft drink was the primary market for aspartame. This made Pepsi and Coca-Cola was the largest buyer. Therefore, investment in production of aspartame by NutraSweet is an example of dedicated assets.
Let us summarize what we have learned in this module. Vertical integration refers to joining together of a series of separate but linked production processes under common ownership. Strategy is used by the firm to alter both the boundary as well as the size of the firm. The stages of production process which are to be integrated depend on the technological and production function of the concerned industry. The traditional explanation of vertical integration. The firm's decision to integrate is based on technical efficiency and production cost saving, uncertainty, and security of supply and market power. The explanations based on the transaction cost economics is used as an alternative explanation for the motivation for vertical integration. Williamson model determined the optimal level of vertical integration and size of the firm. The model distinguishes between technical efficiency, which indicates whether the firm is using the least cost production techniques, and agency efficiency, which indicates the extent to which the firm minimizes coordination, agency, and transaction costs. The contract is termed as incomplete in case of comprehensive contracts cannot be written due to imperfect information. It enables them to have a control over the opportunistic behavior of one partner on the other partner by withholding the supplies. Asset specificity refers to the extent to which the assets can be used to meet the requirements of the only one customer and cannot be put to any other alternative uses without compromising with its production value. These are of four types: physical asset specificity, site specificity, human asset specificity, and dedicated assets. Both incomplete contracts and asset specificity strongly influence the decision of the firm to go for vertical integration.